Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you. I'm delighted to host today's webinar in collaboration with II India. My name is Sindhu Veturi, and I'm part of internal audit with Protivity and lead the technology and data privacy practice in the West region. To set the context for today's webinar, India has officially entered a new era of data governance with the release of DPDPA 2025 rules. These rules shift data privacy from policy-driven compliance to evidence-based, operational, and measurable governance. Today's webinar is about demystifying these rules, understanding what has changed, what is expected from organization, what are the risks that we are looking at, and most importantly, how can we practically achieve these compliances. The new rules introduce four major transformations. First one, privacy is measurable. Organization must demonstrate data flows, data minimization, retention, deletion, vendor controls, AI governance, breach readiness. Second, timelines are sharp. Manual processes will fail. Automation is the backbone of compliance. Third, vendor liability is real. The data fiduciary carries the primary accountability for outsourced processors. You can't outsource the privacy risk to the vendors. Fourth, and most importantly, artificial intelligence enters the regulatory spotlight. Transparency, fairness, secondary use, and bias now matter more than ever. Almost every organization in India is now asking the same set of questions. What exactly do we need to comply with? How do we operationalize privacy beyond policy statements? How do we clean up years of unstructured data and legacy systems? How do we manage 100 plus vendors? Vendor ecosystem exists almost every organization that we know of. What happens to our analytics and artificial intelligence pipelines? What should internal audit do in the next 90 days? And most importantly, where do we even start with? In short, privacy is now a board governed, control driven, technology enabled transformation. To understand where our audience stands today, let's begin with our first poll. Vanshita, can you put up the first poll, please? Are we getting the responses, Vanshita?
Yes.
I'm not able to see it on the screen though.
So people are currently answering them.
Okay.
Within 30 seconds, poll will get closed.
Okay. It's going to be interesting to see where does the majority needle will stack up. The poll is ended. Okay. As you can see, it's no different from what we discussed. So this provides a perfect backdrop for a panel discussion. I'm pleased to welcome our distinguished panelist, Paritosh Desai, Chief Product and Marketing Officer from IDFI. He's going to bring a technology and automation perspective on privacy operations and implementation at scale. Abha Sarda, Chief Internal Auditor from Tata Capital, providing the assurance and governance viewpoint, especially how internal audit should redesign its coverage testing and 90 days readiness. Monica Fatyal, Chief Information Officer from Page Industry, popularly known as Jockey India, bringing the enterprise technology architecture viewpoint on system readiness, legacy modernization, data classification, and practical realities of implementation. Together, this panel is going to offer a 360-degree perspective on governance, technology, risk, audit, and compliance. Everything an organization needs to navigate DPDPA confidently, bringing the enterprise technology architecture viewpoint on system readiness, legacy modernization, data classification, and the practical realities of implementation. Abha, I'm going to start with you. How should internal audit redesign its audit program for privacy?
Thank you, Sindhu, and thank you to Protiviti and II India for having this platform, and really feel privileged to be a part of this discussion today. Just to set a context, I think India has always been like a leapfrog nation, right? We've quite quickly moved from landlines to 5G, from checks to UPI. And when we look at the overall financial ecosystem in the last decade or so, it's kind of a run on the powerful trinity of the mobile expansion, the financial inclusion, and Aadhaar. And obviously, it's resulted into a lot of data flowing at kind of warp speeds. And this includes all kinds of data, whether it's personal, financial, transactional, and even tax data, right? And now with DPDP 2025 coming in, I think everything changes. So to me, I think it's a reset of how organizations really look around data. And if it's a reset for the organization, internal audit obviously cannot be left behind. So I think it's time we have to sprint to really catch up. And if I was to redesign this entire program of the coverage of IA, broadly put it into three pillars: one of governance, the second around processing controls, and the third largely around the technical controls. And I'll try and explain each one of these in a little more practical aspect, so that it's a little easier for everybody to kind of relate with it. So on the governance control, I think what's really needed is a shift from paperwork to purpose. I think internal audit and the organizations need to start asking, are we collecting data because we genuinely need it, or it's something that we've always been doing? And to me, I think it really starts from the top, where board and leadership accountability become extremely important. I think board needs to take this as seriously as they take capital adequacy or liquidity. We've all been hearing about the fiduciary implications of non-compliances. And I think as IA, what we could begin with is really looking at, do the organizations have a data protection officer? Is he independent? Whenever your product or service launches are happening, are they really reviewed for privacy by design? Are there any metrics in place that, around data privacy, which are really getting monitored and reported? Also on the policy front, are the policies really static or they're more agile? We as a nation love and organizations love hoarding data, right? So I think what's more important for IA is whether data minimization now can be embedded in processes. So where, every team knows what they're accountable for and who they're accountable to. So consent, purpose, become extremely important and need to be reviewed before any new data point kind of gets added or built into the journey. And obviously to do that, you need to yourself also do a kind of a data mapping exercise, and where, you're really clear on the purpose. We've got to move away from the culture which says, let's keep it just in case we need it in future. So I think we have to look at what data we have, why do we have it, who's going to use it, and is it something that we truly need? So I think that's largely around the governance control piece. Moving around the processing controls, I think it's like auditing really the life journey of data. And this is where the real transformation is going to happen. We have to move away from hoarding and harvesting data to really conversing with it. So what becomes extremely important here is obviously consent, transparency, and usability. As IA also, we need to evaluate, are consent screens readable? Are they somewhere buried in the journey? Do people really know what they're agreeing to? So you know, kind of see those big
Correct.
pop-up messages with one small font down below. So I think that's important when we are relooking at all our processes. And is it possible for people to also withdraw consent? So this is also something in personal experience where we've seen where regulators also have started kind of looking at it, that, you know, are you forcing a person to give consent, or do they have really an option to withdraw it? And how quickly does the organization kind of honor the withdrawal? Data minimization, obviously, I just spoke about. And there probably IA teams need to probe a little more on, you know, asking for unnecessary documents during onboarding, can we do away with? If you look at, and I come from a financial services industry, so I'll probably quote examples from there. But in the underwriting models, are you using all the data that you're demanding? Are you sanctioning loan data? And are you using that information to cross-sell products really without reconsent? So I think what's going to become extremely important is, you know, there's a spray and pray cross-sell machine. So, you know, you no longer will be used to collect data for loan A and use it for offering loan B. So that's, I think, a critical place where I will also have to kind of play along with the organization and contribute on that aspect. The other, I think, and there's no conversation which gets completed without AI, right? So I think in terms of model inputs, you know, do we have consent around this? How do you assess the fairness and bias? Are the decisions explainable? And obviously, what are the retention rules, you know, in terms of how long can you retain? And are you really purging and deleting data when you really say you will? How long are, you know, the logging and all those exception review kind of requirements will become extremely important. On the third side, which is the technical controls, I think it's about auditing the path and the pipes and not just the policy. So what's going to become extremely important is looking at the organization's technical conscience, more around the access controls and, you know, who all can see customer data, whether privileged accesses are reviewed periodically. Also, on the third party angle, I think vendor access needs to be extremely controlled, and your all controls around vendor accesses become very important. Obviously, we've been looking at databases, etc., but now with data flow through APIs, inspecting API payloads against consent is also very important. Matching data fields to what, you know, their intended purpose was. How do you ensure the third party vendors are really deleting data once they're done, and ensuring that, you know, the required logs and trails are in place? So primarily the logging, monitoring, and data flow or API level controls. What's also important is your encryption and breach responses. So whether data is encrypted end to end, whether detection and escalation workflows work in real life, and how fast can you, you know, do a kind of a breach drill. That's also something which is very important. So I think, Sindhu, if I was to just summarize it, DPDP to me isn't about like really tightening controls. I think it's more around trust, and internal audit is now a function that will help and decide whether the organization treats data really as a privilege and not as an entitlement.
Fantastic insights. Thanks, Ava. So I can't disagree on any of the points that you said. Actually, I like the word you used, trust. And the trust word has become a very pivotal role to play in DPDPA. That has also become the key factor for building brands for organization. The entire driver behind DPDPA is to build the trust between the organization and the customer. That's all it is all about, right? Agree, internal audit now needs to move beyond checklist reviews into evidence-led control level testing. This means data mapping validation, consent flow audits, vendor assurance, retention enforcements, breach preparedness, and adoption of artificial intelligence in your operational roles. These all will come under scanner and they all have to be looked at in order to ensure that we comply with DPDPA. And internal audit has become one of the strongest levers for early identification of gaps, especially in the first 90 days. So it's an important shift for organization to internalize. Thank you so much, Yaba. Coming to you, Monica, what do you think are the highest risk for organizations under DPDPA 2025?
Thank you, Sindhu, for having me for this webinar. I think since the time DPDP has come in, right, it was in a draft stage. The discussions were already going in the organization. Specifically, people think that it is more towards the consumer, right, segment. Whereas when you go into the, the depth of the draft, it talks about anyone's PII, right? Whether it is your B2B, whether it is your consumer or it's your employee as well. Beyond a legit use, you can't keep anyone's PII data. And that's a big thing, right? What we are talking about. I, as an employee of this organization, beyond a legit use, cannot have all the rights to ask the company to delete my data. And this opens up all the, the risk for all us. Today, where all this PII, where do we keep it? And I think all this while the draft were getting discussed in the organization, I admit the whole focus were towards the consumer, how do you market, how do you take the consent, all of that coming in. When it comes to my B2B, and most likely it was going under the legit use because you will be doing, but the data retention, how are you going to retain that data? Even if I have offboarded one of my vendor or a distributor or a partner, how do I handle it, right? I think is one of the high risk area. We need to put our head around, go into the drawing and go back and ask business, why do we have to keep that data in our ecosystem, right? And this is a big change in the business. I think for a business to let go that data, because all this while they have thought that it's my own data, we have worked it and we should know to whom we should not do business, and hence we have to keep it. These all are learning to, from all the old data, what we have kept it. So is from an employee point of view and the consumer point of view. But yes, coming from there, it's actually, engaging whole organization functions, different domain owners in the discussions and explaining the consent piece, not only from a consumer, but also from an employee and from the B2B point of view. And also a large part of my contractual employees, right? Those who are coming and working for us, they are not employed by us, right? And they are 50% of my workforce is there. And explaining that how we have to add this consent piece in their onboarding in every time when they're coming in and offboarded, right, is one biggest risk area for me at this point in time. Looking at an organization view, we have a large ecosystem which is run on a third party, not only from an employee point of view, also from an information system point of view. We have a many SaaS kind of solutions where my PII data getting processed, right, including my SAP. Right, today, if you look at it, the larger ecosystem platform, they themselves, when we are engaging with them on the discussion that how is that, because if it is a SaaS solution, they are the processor, right, and everything, the data going to be managed there, kept there, and they are those who are going to keep it on our behalf and maintain it on our behalf and make it compliant on our behalf. They're the contractual discussions with all such partners coming in, due diligence that, how they are going to keep it, sharing the architecture, share the evidences, how you will keep it, will take our time, a lot of our time, because this ecosystem is very large for us, right? All this while what we have kept in, I think Abha, like she talked about it, AI ML. Yes, that's the one thing. For us, we have very few use cases where we definitely will see that no other models without, especially for this PII, from a PII data is getting trained. And this is where we will go into the explainability and also on the usage. will go into in place. I think from our organization point of view, we are public listed, and most of our data resides in the India because that's the compliance need for us. We don't have that issue of being data being going to cross borders, but we have, I think, in few of the contracts when we were reviewing it, it's being stated that with our consent, the data, the backup DR would be kept it out, right? And that is where the discussions going on, that where all, in what all scenarios the data is uh, residing outside India, is where we are also figuring it out beyond the data inventory, what we are finding it out with the business. I think these are all the key high risk area which I could think about it at this point in time, that for an organization is very important to look at it.
Well pointed. And in my experience too, Monica, I have a similar ask by various clients that I interact with: data retention,
Data
uh,
retention, yes.
yes, vendor ecosystem, the artificial solutions that they've implemented. How is that going to impact the privacy compliance? Legacy system. Many companies are struggling with legacy systems, and then manual processes. How do we handle the manual processes? Abba did mention about financial industry. A lot of financial industries still have the last mile done manually. So how do we handle those PI data? So these are the kind of typical questions that are coming up and concerns for many organizations.
Absolutely.
So I think if the organization focus on these few high risk zones, which is susceptible to exposure in the next 90 days, they will dramatically reduce their exposure, is what we all believe. And I hope we all do that also, right? First is, are we aware? I think solving in order to solve any problem is the first level towards solution, is to be aware of what our problems are. Are we aware? Do we know what kind of data is our company holding? What kind of data is being lying with our vendor ecosystem? Are your last mile covered from our data exposure? And where are these datas archived? What about unstructured data? What about data lying in emails and notepads and XLS and Word documents and PPTs, which is lying in everyone's desktops and personal devices? So these are all things that we have to be mindful of. I think the first step is to take an inventory of the data that you have. That's where you start, so you know what your exposures are. Okay, thank you so much, Monica. Moving to Parishot. So the first question to you is, very interestingly, I mean, this is a question that I face a lot of times. So how do privacy tool practically help organization comply with DPDPA?
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much, Sundar, for having me, and thanks to the panelists as well. I think this is a very interesting question. See, if you look at India, I mean, one of the biggest challenges in India is what? It's the scale, right? It's the scale at which we operate. And I think very few places in the world operate at this scale. So for us, the way to solve is sort of this, this paradox of having compliance and scale is really through a tool and an automated system. I think, there is no way to manually do some of this, right? And the DPDPA is very strict on sort of controls, right? Granular consent, you have to erase it immediately if it's asked for. And this is for millions and millions of users. By no means manually we'll be able to do this. So essentially, I think three things that these tools can do. One is actually operationalizing your consent, right?
Yeah.
For example, converting that notice into multilingual, in India it's 22 languages plus English, that can help collect consent the right way. Automating the DSRs, right? For example, one of the key tenets is I should be able to control as a data principal my own data. Now, this data, like we just mentioned, lives across I don't know how many systems within an organization. So how do you actually, in a one-click manner, identify and then erase and then sort of the last bit, which is provide the accountability that I did capture consent correctly, but also I have done what is required of me as a data processor when the principal has asked me to, manage their consent. So I think these are sort of the key tenets on which tools also operate, right? If I were to talk about what does it mean sort of practically, practically it means doing things like data discovery, identifying those endpoints. And like you rightly mentioned, I mean, data lives not just in, neatly in databases nowadays, right? It's everywhere.
Everywhere.
It's
Correct.
within an organization. If I were to look at, if I were to open laptops, you'll find files, images, and so you have to be able to actually identify data even at that level. So the inventory is one of the first things that a data discovery tool, for example, can do. The other is, like I just mentioned, you have to manage consent. I mean, and what we mean by that is not just, yeah, I took consent and here's a database entry. It has to be done in a manner that, in some ways, if you think of a vault, right, you have to put it in a vault that no one can actually edit and make changes to, right? So it's immutable. Once it's in, and it's just continue. It's a continuous set of logs that have to be maintained, which can be shown to an auditor when the time comes. Giving the data principal the control, so consent management, right? So retention, revocation, updation, all of that has to be managed through a tool. Big problem, vendors. Large organizations will have thousands of vendors. We work with some of the large banks, and they've identified about 19,000 vendors. Now, how do you identify what data has gone where? Are they compliant? Have they done sort of the DPIA assessments and sort of all of that? So I think that also is something that tools can manage. Then the last couple of bits I can talk about is things like having rights management, right? So how do you share this data across organizations? It's one thing for me to collect, but if I'm a conglomerate and multinational type of organization, how does my data move between organizations? How is that controlled? So at the end of the day, I think the tool becomes a partner in a way for a DPO to manage, to get a view, get a dashboard into what's happening in the business itself, and to protect your sort of data principle in that sense, and by doing so, protect the organization.
Absolutely, I agree. So tools are not replacement for compliance. Doesn't mean just because you have tool, you're
No,
compliant. They are
absolutely.
accelerators.
Yes.
They are enablers, right? So what's important for the audience is to understand that manual compliance will not scale, especially with multiple business units, legacy systems, cloud workloads, SaaS environments, accessing
Yes.
open source, growing usage of artificial intelligence. It's not going to be possible for us to comply with DPDPA doing it manual way, right? So tools will help bringing standardization, evidence capture, workflow automation, auditability, which are the exact things that the regulators are going to look at. They will apply those lens when they're doing the audit of your organization. Do I have a trace of activities here? Do I know how things move around in your organization? Do I have a source of truth for the evidences that you provide? How are you ensuring consistency in the practices that you have designed in your organization? These are the typical questions that the regulators are going to ask. And if you have a tool, you can bring out or rather demonstrate these aspects of your compliance posture. So they don't replace, tools are not going to replace governance. They make governance possible. That's the critical
Possible, yeah.
articulation. Tools
Very
are
well put.
enablers, yeah, and they are accelerators. Okay, now moving to Abha. I think before we move to Abha, let's take one more poll question. Panchita, can you put up the next pollings? Let's see. This is going to be interesting because we discussed all these points now. And let's see what comes up to maximum, because vendor is a challenge. There are conversations going on. Should I reduce my number of vendors? Or should I just keep 3 or 4 vendors to start with? So those are things. And as I said, lack of clarity and role in governance. Who in the firm will be accountable for privacy? Who's that one person? That's the point. It's not one person. It's everyone's responsibility. There's going to be a cultural shift in the organization when it comes to compliance. Budget constraints, yes. That's a bigger conversation to have. Every act and every rule is resulting into expense.
They're all equally challenging, so it's going to be difficult picking the biggest one.
Yeah, I think, but I think you have to sort of look at it in some way, at least from my perspective, where I said, I think you have to start somewhere, right? And maybe it starts with with a couple of things in parallel, which can happen, in the sense that you can do, for example, data discovery and understanding what data you have, because without it, no matter what you do, you're sort of lost. And then in parallel, you try to set up the board, you try to figure out who's, because it's not an easy, especially large organization, it's not easy. Who owns the data? I mean, does the business own the data? Is it owned by, IT? Does it own by, and so, and getting these functions together and deciding, yep, I think we will work together, because at the end of the day, if, the organization doesn't move, there is no way to get past this big giant, challenge in front of us.
Yeah, it looks like data discovery tops it. And it's well said, because data discovery is where everybody's struggling. And if you talk to the heads of the organization, any business unit head, they will say, I'm only collecting 5 things. Why do I have to worry? But when you start talking to the grassroots level people, there's a huge disparity between the understanding of what the business unit heads have and what's going on in the grassroots.
What's
And only to
actually
figure out
going
that
on? Absolutely.
so much of data.
I think the challenge is, because we have been, and I also look at marketing, so I understand where we come from a little bit. I think it's that really old school thinking that we used to have, which is collect everything, we'll figure out what to do with it. I'm sure in some way I can use it to model this individual or this cohort, or send out some very targeted information to them, and it's no longer the case. I think we need to quickly come to terms with that and understand what makes sense with this new act that's come in.
Okay, Ava, coming to you back, what operational gaps do you see in Indian enterprises? What's your experience?
So, I think, and largely I would kind of indicate is around, and I was going to pick that and taking a cue from the poll as well. I think it's largely around data discovery and mapping. You've got a lot of legacy systems, you've got a lot of unmanaged data, you've got a lot of vendor data, and really being able to map that, I think that would be probably, something that I would want to take up on priority, and I would see as one of the biggest operational challenges. Obviously, consent sanitization and all that coming up close, but I think that's largest to my mind.
Do you also see data classification as a gap? Because there's a huge debate among the employees. No, my data doesn't fall under the category of sensitive or personal.
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
just collecting. There's a huge debate on that front. How do I classify data? What is the yardstick to decide that this is sensitive and this is non-sensitive? Oh, if I collect this and this together, does it become sensitive or not? Then you have fragmented system. You mentioned about APIs in your earlier responses, and there was so much of APIs connectivity, open source tools that is being used. There are a lot of upstream, downstream application, but many of the organizations do not even have a inventory tool, right? They don't even know that these exist in their ecosystem, that people are using these kind of tools to run their operations, right? And then consent processes, as we touched upon earlier, the consent management. Outdated consent processes, you need to ensure the consent is up to date, keep track of the duration to which the consent is given. Retention, that's the biggest problem that is people are sitting with. How long do we retain? Do we retain it for only 40 days, or do we retain till the purpose is served? If I need to retain a data beyond a stipulated time, how long can I keep it? If I need it for a legal purpose, or I need it for some other regulatory and law purpose, then how do we do it? And I think vendor oversight is the biggest challenge, because all this while is all about getting the job done. Nobody bothered about the kind of data that exists with their ecosystem. Now we have to go and see, what kind of data do you hold and what can we do about it. And now we have to be careful about what data you want to transfer and how much should you share with them, and what kind of controls are expected by our vendors to be deployed otherwise, because we are going to be responsible. Data fiduciary are going to be responsible for whatever data you share with the vendor. So I think it's high time that people take a stock of what is being shared, not just as per the agreement, but also to go and check at the grassroots layer as to what are they exchanging between themselves. That's important. Coming to Monica, what are the biggest misconceptions CXOs have about privacy rules?
I think Monica's muted.
Thank
Monica, we
you,
can't hear you.
Bhavitosh, for pointing it out. I was just in my flow. So thank you, Sindhu. I think it's a great point, and I think it's largely to my interest as well because I've seen in many organizations. I'm not sure about if every organization see it that way through that lens. I see most of the organization takes it that it is a DP. It's the technology team responsibility to make the DPDPA compliant for that organization. You talked about that who's next to be who should be say, held responsible. I think in everything coming down to a CISO, right? And because a large part of the call out in the DPDPA is all about how you're protecting the data, right? How are you keeping, how are you encrypting it, how are you handling it? And even when I'm going down with with my colleagues in the other business function with the HR, finance, and all, they don't understand. Okay, it's in the tool. If we encrypt it, we are compliant, and we don't look at it the DPDPA from the fact that what is the process today beyond the tools, how are we handling those data in the processes, right? Who are the people accessing it? I think that also equally important, that you have to really now limit the access of that within the people within the process, right? And if it is being there, the legend we have to re-look at our processes and the access people roles and access rights. Second part, what you rightly called out is the retention of the data, right? Now it's a new discussion. I don't think so people are able to bring their head around that why should I keep it only 2 years or 3 years? What is DPTPA saying? Though there is no clear directions out there, but you cannot hold it beyond a legit need, right? Now there is a debate happening that I needed this information for this purpose. This is a legit, which does not call it out under the compliance. So you have to read between the 2, 3 documents now. A legal opinion need to come in that how do we take this into consideration, right? This need versus that need. The other part which we are looking at it, I'm sure many organizations has drafted their privacy policy, privacy notice, right? And they have published it on their website. Now that does not mean that publishing your privacy notice that if you make it deem for every transaction what you're doing, right? So it's very important beyond that. How do you make that consent taking process, right? Very specific to the need. I mean, one tick consent for multiple use is nowhere there, and that is where what we calling it out that you need to call out every use case there while taking the consent, clarify in a simple language, not in a legal languages. I think these all are things which I'm seeing it from a perspective that it's a misconception that, right? I know that with my own experience with the business that I have a privacy policy. It's a consumer responsibility to read it and come to us, right? And if they're coming to us, it's a deemed. We said no. So these all are the misconception which my business has it. Second is an IT responsibility, technology, security responsibility. It's not HR. It's everyone's responsibility in the business. Finance, HR, who's managing my distributor, who's managing my suppliers. It goes into the processes. It goes into the contracts. It goes into the ecosystem conversations, and also like what Abha talked about it, right? We have to now continuously think how can we minimize our PII. Why nobody's putting that effort? It's like what we have it, let's encrypt it, let's protect it. But it's all about that. Who's in the organization thinking about that? Why do we need this PII, right?
Correct.
And for what use? What is that differentiator? You will get it in an organization keeping that data for long, right?
Correct.
I understand from a point of view where when you do a D2C kind of business, you are in a D2C kind of business. There, it's come across that you need a personalization, right? Now that also is limiting, right, to an extent that to what level you can use that personalization, right?
Yeah.
And I think these all are the nuance which we have to further study down. Business to business, it will differ, but yes, it's a few areas where we have to come out very clearly in the organization.
Thank you so much for the clarification. Yeah, I agree. Privacy isn't a checkbox or a policy. It's an enterprise-wide transformation that requires governance, accountability, and measurable controls. And misconceptions can create risk, and today's discussion is all about replacing those assumptions with actionable understanding. Yes, I agree. Okay, let's moving to Paritosh. So we did say at the beginning of the conversation today that having a tool does not mean you're compliant. But then how does tool helps us to become a compliant? We said it plays a role of accelerator, enabler. So how do you think? What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think absolutely. The tool by itself is you can look at it as, like any other tool that you may have, right? You need to have. If I were to take the example of a simple example, I don't know, maybe a phone, right? I mean, it's just a tool. It doesn't do anything by itself. It's when you put in the hands of someone who knows what they're doing. And has sort of taken the time to understand what the tool can do, what its capabilities are, and then apply some other rules to it, then suddenly becomes a very powerful way for you to communicate, to manage your life almost, right? I think the same way the tool here is very similar to in that case. The tool will give you the way to discover your data. It'll give you a way to manage consent. It'll give you a way to create consent. It'll give you a way to track down your vendors and see who are compliant, who are not compliant. It's a way for you to manage breach, right? But at the end of the day, the way it works is when people, process, and technology come together. I think that's the only way for any tool to be successful. It's not just the tool, it's not just the people, and it's not just the process. It's today we could say, hey, let me throw 100 people at this problem. Manually, they'll do something. We'll create some sort of process. It's not going to work. It's not going to scale, right? I have a tool, but I don't have people who have thought through what the implications are for their business. How does the business work? Again, it breaks down, right? And at the end of the day, when you put it together, people and technology, but no process. Now, what happens when a breach happens? Who has to be notified? How do you manage this? Who's accountable for this? Which entity takes care of this? I think if that doesn't exist, then again, it falls together. So I think the biggest challenge is the tool itself will not help you be compliant. It's when it's applied by the right set of people who have thought through some processes and then apply the tool. I think that becomes a very powerful sort of toolkit for a company to look at and say, look, this is going to get us to where we need to be. But the rules, the regulations, the process has to be set by the company itself.
Right. I think what it guarantees is the measurable processes, automated workflows, centralized evidence, and it reduces the human error that usually happens in sustaining a compliance posture. So actually, the compliance actually stems from governance, from the accountability established in an organization, internal audit oversight, legal interpretation, and leadership direction. These are some of the key success criteria for us to sustain compliance in any organization. A tool or a particular process implemented or having a policy or a great playbook curated is not going to ensure compliance, right? These are the pillars to ensure that we have right amount of governance, we have clearly defined responsibilities, we have lines of defense working at all levels, collaboration with legal team, ensuring they are part of any conversation, any major change, and of course the tone set by the leadership. These will definitely lead to a very successful compliance posture. We'll just take one more poll before we head to one last question, and then we can open up for question and answers. Vanshita, can you put up the next poll? The consent collection is going to be a very interesting topic because we have to wait for the end of the year to see how it's going to get actually established in our country, and everybody is speculating, do I do this in my application? Do I have to make these provisions? Penalties is a favorite topic.
250 crores.
250 crores. The conversation is over. That's the only driver behind ensuring privacy is taken care of. And yeah, very interestingly, while we are so busy wondering about the outside view in what kind of data we're collecting from outside, what kind of data is residing outside, people are not thinking about internal data usage also. Like our employee data is equally exposed to these laws, and that seem to have taken a backseat or rather not even been considered in many organizations. It's an eye-opener for them when we tell them that even your own employee data is supposed to comply with DPDPA.
No,
Sidhu,
absolutely, Sindhu. In fact, when you talked about misconceptions, in the earlier days, that was one that I was carrying, that it's largely around consumer data till you realize that it's a lot more than that.
yeah, I think the highest is gone to consent collection. Everybody is a speculative topic and data breaches. Great. Um, about the next question before we jump on to Q&A, uh, what are the priorities that the company should focus on the next 90 days? Because everyone is worried. What are my immediate things that I need to do? How do I make sure that I meet those timelines prescribed by the rules? There are clear-cut timelines defined. What should I start doing day one? How do I ensure my 90-day compliance is met?
So, Sindhu, I kind of say that you should look at it as a marathon and not as a sprint. It's nothing that you need to fix everything as you begin. So
Okay.
to me, I think the first 90 days, it's more important to say that organizations shouldn't try to solve everything. I think the goal clearly can be to, get clarity and in terms of, where our data really is, who's using it, and, where do the biggest risks really sit. Because, and this is about baseline for compliance readiness is how I would put it. So more importantly, and at the cost of repetition, I would say what it could include is, your data discovery and mapping exercise. As, data fiduciaries, you need to know exactly what data you hold. And where I think a lot of effort needs to also go is in your legacy and unmanaged systems, third-party vendors, etc., right? Consent sanitization, it also came out in the poll because what DPDP really mandates is free, specific, informed, unconditional, and unambiguous consent, right? It's just too much in one phrase. And we are used to somewhat bundled consents, very small font sized consents, big buried disclosures, if I may say so. So I think that's another piece is in terms of is to figure this out and start mapping this entire piece and getting. So I think consent sanitization will be an important piece to touch upon in the first 90 days. Obviously retention we've spoken about. Monica also spoke about it, and you also did mention it. So I think defining retention periods and implementing disposal mechanisms, so it's largely around the what, and how is what could be kind of targeted in the first 90 days. Vendor and third party risk, I think there's a because while you're the data fiduciary and the processing is outsourced, if the vendor fails, you fail, right? So what all processes meet security and organizational obligations is, and mapping of all that with the third parties, I think that's also important. And if I may say, it's critical to assign responsibility. I think that's going to be extremely critical. Who within the organization, and like Monica said, right, everything's not with IT or the CISO. So who within the organization is responsible for consent management, for data handling, for security breach response, and for vendor oversight. So I think stipulating all this becomes very important in the first 90 days. And so this will help kind of implement a robust DPDP aligned framework. It's going to be baseline stuff that you do so that your implementation is easier, more precise, and defensible. I think if I was to sum this up, I think it's not about rushing into it and it's not about perfection. I think it's more about honesty, getting started and building momentum, getting everybody aligned with clear cut what's defined and who defined. And if we do that well, I think it'll become much easier and smoother as we move along the journey.
Absolutely. Thanks for giving us such a clear roadmap. To reinforce for the audience, the next 90 days must focus on rapid wins such as data inventory, consent cleanup, vendor contract updates, breach readiness, and establishing governance ownership. If organizations try to do everything at once, they will lose the momentum. Prioritization will make or break readiness. That will enable a clear roadmap for ensuring compliances. Okay, Should we put up the third poll and then we can quickly jump into Q&A? Vanshita?
We have 10 minutes left. So I
So we
think
stop to, okay, we'll keep the
Yeah.
Q&A. Okay, I'll open the Q&A. Feel free. The last one, if the organization is GDPR ready, do I still need to have DPDBA implemented separately? Well, there are certain delta points that you need to cover. I agree, if you're largely compliant with GDPR requirement, you would have a lot of things in place for sure. But there are certain amount of delta that has to be covered, and that should be looked at minutely in terms of timelines, what kind of consent management is unique. It's not there in GDPR. So you definitely have to brace for that. What are the notification period? What are the data retention period? They're going to change right now, isn't it? The GDPR has certain next days. DPDPA will have, so you have to pick up the one which is the most stringent one to keep it as a policy in your organization. So that's my stand. Feel free to jump in case if you want. How much impact it has on banking sector? Regardless of the sector, if you are touching upon anyone's personal data in whatever mode and fashion, there is a privacy impact for sure. And banking sector of all the sector is dealing with customers directly. So certainly you have good amount of personal as well as sensitive data of your customers. So certainly it will have the impact. How do we define and identify PI data? We were discussing on this. We spoke about this today. Data classification is the biggest debate in every organization. How do I classify what is the terminology for personal and intimate data? As employee data is personal data, and there's a big conception of what is. So regardless of the role of the individual, whether they are customer, whether they are employee, whether they are vendor, it doesn't matter what role they play. If you have their personal information, it is exposed. So you need to be careful about how you treat those data in your organization. So just because it's an employee data, it doesn't mean it doesn't have as importance as customer data is. So the law does not differentiate the role of the individual. What law says is if you are custodian of personal data, you have to protect it. As simple as that.
And Sindhu, just to add a little bit around it, I think there's direct identifiers and indirect identifiers, I think.
Yes.
So while largely people assume of it to be your name, email, passport number, phone number, etc., I think indirect identifiers are also very important, like your location data, your job title, description, your
Behavioral data.
Exactly. Just wanted to add that to what you actually
Absolutely.
mentioned.
All location, gender, preferences, behavioral data. A lot of organizations are keeping a track of all of this. Will that come under a purview? In fact, I recently had a inquiry from a client where they were asking whether a behavior tracking, is it coming under the purview of DPDPA? If you have their personal data, of course, it will be exposed. There's a very interesting question for the organization with multinational setup with IT infrastructure landscape designed to support worldwide locations and also considering cloud providers. How can one navigate the issue of data and or cross-border data exchange? Any hints, suggestions? Monica, you want to pick it up because you are in that situation. So for any MNCs, you ask my experience, most of the multinational organization today, to a great extent, they are geared up for compliance because they are anyway exposed to GDPR, various other country laws. So they have a lot of things in place. As far as DPDPA is concerned, there is a strong direction on cross-border transfer, and that has to be taken into account when you are going to work on DPDPA compliance. That should be mindful of. Data, what kind of data should be considered for DPDPA? Even that has been very clearly articulated in the schedules, and that should be looked upon. So just because you're compliant to GDPR or any of the US or Asian laws does not mean you automatically are compliant to DPDPA. There is a delta, and that definitely has to be looked at.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
DPDP applicability and subsidiaries of organization based out of US. It depends on what kind of data you have. If it's an organization registered out of US and does not have any Indian data present there, Indian citizen data, then there's nothing to worry. But if there is a US based firm, but you are a custodian of Indian citizens' data, then yes, you will be exposed to the DPDPA. A lot of questions. How should we ensure vendors are adhering to the technical controls? $1 million question. That's why we have vendor risk framework and we need to do due diligence from time to time. Please classify your vendors in multiple tiers. Your critical vendors have to be periodically assessed to see whether they're compliant to the DPDPA compliance. And in today's session, we did discuss about how data fiduciary is still going to be the primary responsible entity or primarily accountable for the data that has been shared with the vendor. So we would strongly recommend that you classify your vendors, have a risk framework instituted, and decide what should be the periodicity for the top tier, middle tier, and the lower. Maybe the lowest can be looked at once in a year or once in twice a year. It all depends on the kind of data they hold. So that is also a lens that you need to apply when you stagger the vendors in your organization.
And just to add to what you mentioned around risk profiling, I think due diligence and contractual safeguards also become very
Yes.
important.
I missed
And
that out.
obviously, the periodic and the life cycle reviews and audit, I think, be very important.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, also when we look at even tooling, for example, there are tools now. What we do is look at contracts and actually highlight areas of concern.
Yeah.
So either you create new contracts which your vendors have to adhere to,
Yeah.
or unfortunately, in some cases, they will have to go because they're not adhering to or not ready to adhere to the contract that is required. And I think, as Sindhu mentioned, I mean, it's very important to classify your vendors first as the high risk ones, and risk in the sense of the kind of data they hold more than anything else, and then try to bring them into the framework so that through a tool you can actually assess some of this. But then you'll have to do periodic audits on their systems, and they'll have to unfortunately comply with it. It's a complex problem because a vendor will have multiple clients. Now imagine a Blue Dart. Unfortunately, they will have thousands of their data fiduciaries sending data. So I think it's still a complex problem, but I think there's ways around it for a company as well.
Yeah. I agree, and that is one of the asks. Within first 90 days, you need to update all your vendor contractual agreements so that it is taken care of. Is consent required from data principals for sharing data with external auditors? I like that. Does anybody want to take that question? Is consent required from data principals for sharing data with external auditors?
I think we talked about, Sindhu, here about the legit need, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's being very clearly, it's ambiguous, it's vague in the act, but we still have to establish that it's a legit need, and with that legit need, it's all coming to the requirement to do that audit, and we have to do it. Any which ways for the DPDPA, somebody will come and see our PIA data and will have to give us a certificate. Yes, we are compliant and not compliant. For that purpose, they will need an access, right? With the consent manager organization, which is getting formed by the government outside, they will have it. So I think it's all boils down that how do you establish that it is a legit?
Correct. Well said. And in fact, whenever you're sharing data, it's not about the role played by two parties in a transaction. It's about one, determine whether you are sharing any personal data. That then is when the DPDPA comes into picture. Second, the law does not prohibit you from doing any business as long as you are doing it for a legit purpose, as Monica rightly said. You can share it. Just all the matter of being transparent and taking a consent. Therefore, you are sharing it with informed manner, and there is nothing hidden behind the transaction, right? I think we are almost towards the end, and let me just summarize. And there are a lot of questions. We'll try and answer them. Plenty of questions here today, but unfortunately, we don't have enough time now. So as we conclude today's session, one thing is very clear. DPDP 25 is more than a compliance requirement. It's a strategic shift in how organizations handle data, risk, and trust. You have 5 takeaways today. Privacy governance is leadership responsibility. Second, data mapping, consent, and retention are the biggest gaps. Third, vendor ecosystem and artificial intelligence pipelines determine your highest risk. Fourth, internal audit has 90 days assurance mandate. Fifth, automation is the only sustainable way to operationalize compliance. We will be also launching a short DPDPA survey. You will get the links. It'll only take 2 minutes for you to fill it up. It will help assessing your organization privacy posture. In return, Protiviti will share a personalized insight report indicating your maturity score, the key risk area, what is a recommended roadmap for the next 90 days. So on behalf of Protiviti and IA India, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to partnering with you on your DPDPA journey, and have a wonderful day ahead. And you have our contact details. Please reach out in case of any questions. And all the questions which are unanswered, we will take a stock of them and we will publish it back with the responses. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for the wonderful participation. Thank you, Paritosh, Abha, and Monica. It was wonderful having you. And we look forward to many more such webinar sessions. It was an interesting conversation. Nice to hear the perspectives that you brought onto the table. These are real perspectives, not theoretical ones, and they are the ones which you're dealing with in your own organization. Thank you so much for being so open and transparent and candid about some of your opinions here. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
everyone.
Sindhu. Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
so
Thanks
much.
for having us.
Have a
Pleasure.
wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.